I'm Dr. Liz Rutledge, Director of Wildlife Resources at the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Thank you for attending tonight's webinar, which is part of the Learn to Deer Hunt webinar series. The series offers a dynamic lineup of presentations and materials curated by the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program, covering a wide variety of topics to guide new deer hunters from preseason scouting to processing. The series is hosted and moderated by the North Carolina Wildlife Federation in conjunction with its South Wake Conservationists chapter. General housekeeping, we ask that everyone stay muted throughout the webinar until we have the Q&A session at the end. Also, this webinar is being recorded for future use, so please turn off your camera if you do not want to be seen on the video recording. We ask that you either put any questions you have in the chat box during the presentation, which will be read during the Q&A session, or you may raise your hand to be called on during the Q&A session. To raise your hand, use the hand sign in the top right corner of your screen. I'll take a couple minutes to give you some background information on the North Carolina Wildlife Federation programming related to R3, retention, recruitment, and reactivation. North Carolina Wildlife Federation has partnered with NC State University, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, Wake County Wildlife Club, and other conservation groups to build upon current R3 programming and introduce college students from non-traditional backgrounds to hunting and shooting sports. Getting Started Outdoors is a partnership between the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and the Wildlife Resources Commission to provide an all-day educational workshop and one-on-one deer hunting mentoring opportunities for participants. For those interested in wildlife and conservation policy issues, the Wildlife Federation has the CAMO Coalition, which is a listserv to keep members up to date on policies specifically geared towards hunters and anglers. Artemis is a National Wildlife Federation program that NCWF promotes to uplift women in sporting and conservation to provide small group hunting and mentoring opportunities for females. The North Carolina Wildlife Federation is proud to host this webinar series in conjunction with the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program and additional partners who are contributing the educational content for the webinars we're able to bring to you. Excuse me. In addition, the North Carolina Wildlife Federation volunteers, Guy and Judy Gardner, who are here with us this evening, partner with the Wildlife Resources Commission to provide skills-based seminars consisting of Deer Hunting 101 and From Field to Freezer Deer Processing. These are open to the public and these will be held in September. The North Carolina Wildlife Federation also works directly with North Carolina Hunters for the Hungry to facilitate the donation of hunter-harvested deer to feed the hungry across the state. So the seminar series was curated by the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program and the facilitating partners listed on the slide. The webinars are for adults new to deer hunting and includes practical topics to explore the ins and outs of hunting to enhance your overall outdoor experience. Please see the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program Facebook page for more information on field opportunities. I'm happy to introduce guest speaker Guy Gardner from the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program. Guy has been an active wildlife educator in North Carolina for the past 15 years, serving as a volunteer for the Wildlife Resources Commission. He's worked with the National Deer Association and the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Since receiving the North Carolina Governor's Award for Wildlife Conservationists of the Year in 2009, Guy has been actively involved in development of the Wildlife Federation's Farmers Managed Deer Program, promoting responsible deer management on and around North Carolina farmlands. He has organized both deer camps and a first-of-its-kind new hunter mentoring initiative, the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program. And he's delivered both deer hunting seminars and hunter education classes on behalf of the Wildlife Resources Commission. Several STEM-inspired programs promoting youth connection with the outdoors have been developed by Guy and his wife, Judy. Guy is an active member of South Wake Conservationists chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, hosting a deer donation site for North Carolina Hunters for the Hungry on behalf of South Wake Conservationists. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Guy for our presentation this evening.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Liz. And I want to welcome you all and thank you for attending tonight. And this is the final webinar in this 14 webinar series, Learn to Deer Hunt, hosted again by Dr. Liz Rutledge and the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. I want to give my thanks to them for this great hosting of this program and making it available by recording them. These will be available on our library through New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program, and they are making it available on YouTube as well. So this is something that we'll be using for years to come. I want to thank all of our partners who took the time to develop and present during this webinar series. They all volunteers, or nobody gets paid for this, so they spend a lot of time doing it, developing the presentation, and then taking the time to present it. So this one, Deer Hunting Strategies, this webinar tonight is really pulling together all the information you got during the other webinars during the series. There's no silver bullet to guarantee hunting success. It really just takes a lot of patience, a lot of determination, and then what I like to do is enjoy the hunt, whether I get deer or not. So it's really just developing that enjoyment of the outdoors. So what I've done is what's key to hunting success. So you want a deer to be there when you are. So this is using all your scouting skills, and we'll talk about scouting as something that's been discussed earlier as well. And you do all your scouting, you put up your stand in a location where, okay, there's definitely deer here, and you make the best choice you can and you determine why you want to stand here, and because there are deer. Now you don't want the deer to know you're there, so you've done all your preventatives for the senses of deer. They've got very acute senses. They're prey animals, so they're going to be trying to determine where you are. You put up your stand in an area where there's camouflage and everything you need to do, so the deer doesn't know you're there. And then the last thing, you've done all your practicing. You're ready to take that shot. You know exactly where to shoot, and so you can make a nice, clean, ethical shot. So this kind of breaks it down. Of course, it's simplicity. We'll discuss these 3 steps in different ways through the course of the night. So I thought I'd start out with what is success. For some people, and when you start reading and looking at some of these YouTube videos, it's a lot of things about the big bucks. This was kind of tradition for years. The hunters we're seeing coming in now are more interested in other things, and a lot of it is the food. So, it's not always about the big bucks. It's not even about killing deer. I enjoy just sitting out on the stand. I enjoy that, watching the daylight come alive. The whole woods comes alive, and animals are out there doing things that they do every day. They don't know you're there, and you get to enjoy that. So you're really, like it says, experience nature as a participant. And it's a lot of camaraderie when you start hunting, making friends, if you new friends maybe, or maybe some family that you're hunting with. This New Hill Hunter Education Mentoring Program, one of our big things we try to do is get these new hunters to network with some of the other new hunters. And this has been very successful. And so this is one of the other things that have been very helpful for us, is to have the people work together to learn. But like I said, the big thing coming up now is food, and it's an all-natural food source, very high in protein. So it's a great way to know where your food is coming from. And it's a busy world nowadays. A lot of stress is going on. Getting out there, sitting in that stand, boy, can relieve a lot of stress. So I just this quote down here is from Fred Bear. Fred Bear is kind of my hero. He was kind of back in the 40s, hunted only with traditional bows. He founded Fred Bear Archery. But his quote is, "A hunt based only on the trophies taken falls far short of what the ultimate goal should be." And I believe this, and I think this is what's happening to the new hunters that are coming up. It's not all about the trophy. So what does it take to be successful? And I break it down really into hard work. I'll mention hard work. It does take hard work. It's enjoyable. You'll learn to love it. but it can be very hard. The other is knowledge. A third of that is knowledge. And like I said, my tagline is never stop learning. So, you know, when preparation meets opportunity, you get success. But it does take some luck. If you read enough, you'll hear where a brand new hunter goes out sitting in a stand the first time and shoots a state record buck. You know, that not necessarily a lot of skill involved there. They just happen to be there when this deer walked by. Deer have a pretty long home range, a pretty wide home range. And the day you're out there, does this deer walk by you? You know, this takes some luck. We try everything we can to pattern these deer, but we don't understand everything about deer and how they act. So a lot of it is just luck. So never stop learning. There's so much information out there. Some of it is not quite as good, I believe, but there's a lot of it is good. A mentor is the best way to go. So you do want to learn everything you can about the deer, and you'll never learn it all. I've been hunting for a lot of years, and I wouldn't even claim to probably know a fraction of what there is to know about deer. A lot of universities are doing research on them now, and you'll see studies posted that you know, there's some new information that they're getting. So one thing you do want to learn, though, is what are the deer eating? There's a whole list. I'll have a list on this slide series, and you can go to all places. It has a list of foods that deer eat. But what are they eating in the area you're hunting at? That's the key, not what they're eating up in Michigan or something. You need to know what they're eating. During your scouting, you want to go out there and look, are they actually eating it? Look for the browse. They'll be up at deer level. You'll see where have bitten off leaves or stems or things like that, so you can actually see where they've been browsing. It takes a lot to learn their travel patterns and home range. Down there at the bottom right-hand corner, that image, that is a home range of a buck. That figure 8 is about a square mile, maybe a little bit more. So that is their home range. A square mile is 640 acres. So they can take up a pretty big area. If you can see the blue line down there, that's the range during the breeding season, the rut. And you can see how much greater that is. These bucks travel a lot farther trying to find receptive does. So there may be deer that you've never seen before show up on your camera or in front of your stand, and that may be why, maybe during the breeding season. You always want to think food and cover. During the rut, the bucks don't feed quite as heavily as they do during the rest of the season because they got other things on their mind. But there is cover is important, and this is something that's not thought about too much, especially by newer hunters. They think more maybe food, but cover is where deer want to go when they're being pressured. So that's you're going to have to find cover in the area. I mentioned the breeding season. Generally here in the east, it's towards the end of October, 1st of November. This is a great time to be in the woods, and don't go out there and spend, you know, up till 8 or 9, 10 o'clock and then go back. Spend the whole day in the woods if you can, because what's going on, these bucks are looking for doe, the doe are even looking for bucks. There's a lot of activity out there. Bucks are trying to breed, they lose a lot of their smarts, and they do some pretty dumb things sometimes. So this is a great opportunity to take a deer with all the activity that's going on. And during your scouting, you're going to be looking for what sign they leave behind. Of course, tracks and droppings and rubs and scrapes and all that. We'll talk about rubs and scrapes, but you gotta look for these. You gotta look for trails. These are the areas you're going to try to find. This is why you're going to put a stand up in that area. And senses, I'll go into a little bit more detail on the senses. This is imperative that you learn to defeat these. Like I said before, they are prey animals, and their senses are what allows them to survive. So there's a lot of text on this one. I'm going to kind of go through it, but I do recommend it's a great way to learn is to keep written records. Make a journal of some sort, and take notes as you're doing your scouting. You know, when do you see deer? You see deer. What time of it? What time of the day is it? What month is it? What's the weather like? You know, are you seeing these deer? And it helps you from year to year to help pattern the activity of the deer in your area. You know, what are they feeding on? Take notes. Anything that you can to help increase your information on the deer. especially the ones in your area. And this is where game or trail cameras can help, because the photographs have the time stamp and a date stamp. A lot of them even have the weather on there, and so that can really help, in your journal, adding more information to your deer knowledge. So you want to hunt often. This is obviously, the more often you're up in the stand, the more likely you are to see a deer. I like to say you got to hunt smarter. You got to think about things. The more time in the woods, the better your odds. Get in there early in the morning. This is where some of the hard work comes up, is get in there early before the other hunters. Even if you're hunting game lands, you can get there very early, go back into your stand, set up, and then when the other hunters start coming in and they start slamming their truck doors and they start walking in there, they're pushing deer towards you. So it's a great way to do it. Stay late. It's very common where hunters will go out and hunt till 10, 11 o'clock, then they want to go for lunch. They'll come out. All this activity moves deer around. I've killed several deer when I used to hunt public lands down in Florida. Definitely were pushed by other hunters. So it's a great way if you can stay up as long as you can. Try to hunt where others don't. This is where we'll show these on some of the, when you go to the maps, you want to look at some of these accesses. Get back there farther. This is the hard work part of things, where other hunters aren't. Water access, I push this a lot. I think this is a great way to be successful. We have some good game lands, Jordan Lake, Harris Lake. Those are on the reservoirs. If you can get a boat, you can go in and land, have your stand set up back there. When the other hunters are coming in from the highway, they're pushing deer back to you. So these are just things you can do to help your success. You want to be physically and mentally ready. Being able to sit up in that stand. You just got to know that you got to have the patience and know that a deer can just show up at any time, and they usually do. When you're least expecting it, that seems to be when the deer show up. So it can be a real shock when you look over there and all of a sudden there's one there that wasn't there just a couple seconds ago. Don't overhunt a stand. This is why it's nice. It's a little bit hard to do on game lands. You don't want to set up multiple stands sometimes, but overhunting a stand can be very detrimental. You're leaving scent. All this human activity. It can alter a deer's pattern, and they may avoid that. So especially the older deer, as they learn to avoid humans, and that activity can make a big difference. Again, defeat their senses. I'll mention this. This is the key. Too much movement, making extra noise, and wind direction. Always know the wind direction. So defeat their senses at all times. And have a plan. This has happened probably to every hunter. You get out the stand and you go, oh, my ammunition's in the truck. So you got to get down. Now you got all this activity. You got this scent you're leaving back there, and you're not up in your stand because you got to go back and get something you forgot. So this is very important. I'm not a real anal person normally, but the evening before a hunt, I have my pack out there and I make sure everything's in there. I lay everything out, and I kind of go through the hunt in my mind. What do I need? Is there anything else that I'm forgetting? So something to think about. You don't want to get up there and have something you need that you don't have. And practice in advance in your stand. Don't buy a stand and then go set it up and hunt out of it. You set it up, whether it's a climber or a ladder stand or anything, go up and down. And if you're going to hunt with archery, especially with a bow, this is key, because you've got to be able to pull that string back. Your elbow's coming back. If it's hitting the tree before you're at full draw, you need to adjust. And you don't want to do that when there's a deer stand in there. So practice in advance. Practice getting to and from your stand. I've seen, now not on game lands, you don't want a nice trail going to your stand on game lands necessarily, but on private land, I've seen stuff where that Growing Deer TV, they actually get a leaf blower and move the leaves away from on a trail going to their stand so they don't make crunchy noise. If nothing else, move the sticks away, and so you're not crunching sticks. Try to make it as quiet and scent-free as you can. Realize that you may get down to your area that you're going to hunt, and the wind's not right, even though before you left, the weatherman said the wind's going to be out of the north. So you said, oh, that stand's going to be perfect. But you get down in the woods, that wind may be swirling, it may be out of the south. It's not always the same. So have a plan B, a place to go, hopefully that you can go where the winds are right, or whatever the condition is that's not right for your first stand is right for the second one. So you got to be flexible. It's all about flexibility. And this goes along with as the season progresses, because what you've scouted in September for bow season, and even in October, the first of the season, does not necessarily hold for November and December. Deer change their patterns, their food sources change, the amount of activity, the pressure from other hunters has changed, so they're going to change their patterns as well. So you got to be flexible. The flexibility is important, and you got to be ready for this shot. You got to practice it. Like I said, get up in your stand. Don't just shoot from on the ground in your backyard at a bag target with your bow, or don't go to the shooting range and only shoot from the bench. Get up in a stand. Get up in some elevation, especially with archery, because you get up 15, 16 feet and it can have an impact on the point of impact for your arrow. So you got to practice from up there as well as down on the ground. And the conditions, if you only practice when it's nice and bright and sunny, it might have an impact on it when you get out there and it's drizzly or something like that. It may have an impact on how you shoot. So, try to get out there when the conditions aren't great, so that you can mimic what you're going to see when you get out there and hunt. Don't make excuses. You got to get out and scout. I know it's hot. I got to be careful of ticks. Do all the precautions you can to avoid ticks and chiggers. But it just takes getting out there and scouting. Same with on a nice cold drizzly day, you go, I'm not going out there. The biggest buck I've ever killed, which wasn't gigantic, but it was a big buck for me, was killed on a dreary, cold, late November day. And I went out there just for a few minutes saying, well, I'm going to try it. And lo and behold, this deer walks by. So those are great days. There's usually less hunters out there, and it's a great time to be out. Never stop learning. Again, I'll repeat that. This is something a successful hunter is going to want to do. They want to learn everything they can all year round. So I recommend a planning calendar. You can see this has got a lot of stuff on it. I'm kind of going to skirt through some of this, but kind of map out your year. You're not going to be out hunting. This hunting doesn't take, full time. It can take a lot of time, depending on how devoted you get to it. But you want to kind of keep these things in mind, and sometimes it takes something like this so you don't forget them. Scouting, you want to start the scouting. I like to start scouting the day deer season's over, because you're getting out there, the deer sign is still there. You can see rubs, you can see scrapes. The deer are doing what they do towards the end of the season, so this is a great time to get out there. There's no bugs and there's no leaves, so you can see a longer distance. You can see some of these rubs that are farther away that you can't see during when the leaves are on there. So it's a great time to be out there. Deer is going to start their shedding of their antlers. So February, March, you can go out there and look for shed antlers. And when I'm doing that, I'm scouting. If you're going to put in food plots, this is something we've added only if you've got your own land. So there's time to get started on that. Turkey season is coming up in April, so you want to start getting ready for that. Actually, before that. Target practice, that's on there multiple times. June is a time to go on the Resources Commission website for the public land permit applications. If you don't have a place to hunt, these can be great opportunities. There's still some available now, and they have them for different species. What they are, they're hunting areas that have only a limited number of people are going to be allowed. It's a drawing, and I think there is a fee. I think it's a $10 fee. You go to apply for these, but if you get them, it can be great. So think about those. Continue checking your trail cameras. Getting towards August, you're going to make sure your stands are all set up and ready, because you don't want to be out there too close to when the season starts. You don't want to have human activity and scent left out there. You want to leave them alone. September starts bow season. Here, we're coming up here very soon. Even dove season starts. Labor Day weekend is opening dove. It's a great time to be out. Then the archery season starts a week or two into September. So think about those. Squirrel season, I'm an avid squirrel hunter. I love it next to deer hunting. So this starts in October. So when I'm squirrel hunting, I'm also scouting for deer. So it's a great time to be out. October's Eastern deer season. You make sure that's on your calendar. You're ready for that. But the end of October, 1st November is the rut. So you want to have that. Make sure you're out there, spend as much time, try to save up your vacation as much as you can for those times, end of October, 1st November. It's a great time to be out there when that activity happens. Don't give up on December. The deer have been pressured a lot, but what I found when I hunted game lands down in Florida, December, there was actually fewer hunters sometimes because hunters are doing other things. They're fishing, they're duck hunting or stuff. So they leave deer alone. And sometimes you can go to these areas on game lands and the deer actually start doing a little bit more of their normal stuff because they're being left alone. So, think December may be a great time. You have to hunt a little bit harder. They're going to still be back in the thicker stuff, but it's a great time. It's also a great time to get your Santa list, get all your hunting supplies and put it on the list and wait for Santa. All right, so those are great things, the journal and your log like that, your calendar to kind of keep things in perspective so you don't forget to do this stuff. And it's a great way to keep on track. All right, again, I said think thick and hard work. I know you may get sick of that, but that's to me is the key. You want to look for these isolated areas. Then they're hard to reach, and you can find them on these maps. Game lands have them. You can go to the Google Earth, all those different maps like that, and identify some of these areas that look promising before you scout. It doesn't. You can't look at a map and say, "Oh, that's where I'm going to hunt." You got to go out there and do the scouting with the boots on the ground once you find it. But it helps narrow down some of these big properties to areas you want to focus on. Think of swamps. If some of these images, these satellite images, if they're done during the winter, you can tell the difference between pine and evergreen trees and the deciduous trees, the hardwoods that are losing their leaves. They could be oak trees. That could be very promising. So you can see that if they're an image during the winter. So use that. Look for swamps and creek bottoms. You can usually see those as on these maps as well. Again, water access. These two images over there with the yellow areas, that's showing some potential travel corridors. Those little strips of green are actually wooded in between fields. Now, deer, especially during the hunting season, they don't want to be out in those fields. They're too obvious, too vulnerable out there. So they're going to walk in the woods. So these little strips will funnel deer activity. Great things to look for on these maps. Deer are also creatures of the edge, and there's the picture there on the bottom left. That's an edge. That's where two habitat types come together. This is considered a hard edge where you have trees and then like planted areas or field. The deer love to be along edges. There's food there. The leaves are available for browsing, but then there's cover real quick to hop in the woods for protection. So these are great things to look for. Sometimes you look for areas that are overlooked, and they may be close to a highway. It may be some thick clump that people walk by all the time or drive by all the time and don't even think about it. And so, you got to think outside the box sometimes and look for these little areas that are overlooked. And that goes along with game lands. There's little patches of game land that are scattered sometimes that are overlooked. And you just got to scout. It takes time, spend time in the woods. Small game hunting, squirrel season goes into January and February. And again, I love to squirrel hunt, but I'm also scouting. So this is a great time to be out there. You're going to be obviously looking for deer tracks, look for droppings. In January and February, the rubs and scrapes are still available. You can find places. Are there other hunters been out there? You can see signs of them being there, looking for their food sources, then their bedding, thick stuff. All right, so find their bedroom, and this is the thick stuff. Again, I am going back to bedding area, thick stuff. the thickest places possible is where these deer are going to go, especially once they're pressured. And this is a thing, you know, if you could walk by and not see a deer back in there, this is a potential bedding area. There's a lot of those. If you want to look for a bed, this upper picture is you'll look for a kind of a elliptical, depressed area in the vegetation, or even in the leaves. Sometimes in the leaves you can see where they've been bedding down. And so where would you be if you were being hunted? You know, you're not going to be walking out in the fields, or you're not going to be standing in the wide open. You're going to be in the thick stuff. Blackberry patches are great. You know, people don't walk through those because they've got briars, but deer, they just, their skin and fur just shed those briars. They love to get back into that stuff. When I hunted in Florida, the public lands were mainly swamps. We got a lot of that east of here. I found that in some of these swamps, there's little islands. I mean, they may be only 10 feet across, but these deer learn that those are little hidey holes that nobody goes to, and they'll bed down up in there. So we used to take kayaks and go drifting down these little creek things, which in Florida, the creeks, not like the creeks here, these are big, wide open, wide floodplain areas and a lot of trees in there. You had to kind of work in there, but that was a great way. These deer would be in there, and nobody else went back there. Of course, cutovers, you know, if you can find cutovers, it's hard to hunt into a cutover because they get so big, but along the edges, or you make shooting lanes in there. Trying to find the trails, you know, find the food sources. You know, it's not always an obvious food source because deer wander and they browse, but they're going to be outside of the covered area, cover, and looking for food. And so if you can find these trails going between food and cover, these are great places to hunt. I mentioned the food, and here's just a big list of stuff. You know, these may not be in your hunting area. So you got to look for what they're hunting or what they're feeding on in your area. These, the ones that are bolded, are what you might find as evergreen, and they'll be there in the fall and the winter. The number one you want to concentrate on are acorns. If you want to hunt oak trees, that's a great place. Usually it attracts deer, but oak trees, they've got to be dropping acorns. So now's the time to get out there, and with your binoculars, if you're looking for acorns, get your binoculars, look up in those oak trees. Are there acorns up there? Are they going to be dropping? Because an oak tree without acorns is not a big attractant. Clovers, you know, generally are planted. Greenbrier is that little vine in the middle left. Great food source, but there's just not a large quantity usually. So, you know, they can attract deer. It's just hard to find enough quantity to really satisfy deer. Honeysuckle and privet, these are non-native invasives. You don't generally be something you want to plant. The middle right picture with the white flowers, that's honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle. The bottom left is privet. They are evergreen, and after the acorns are gone, they're going to be focusing on things that are green. So these can be sources of a food source for them. And then the wheat and oats are generally cover crops that farmers plant, and they will be a great source if you're hunting and you've got access to farmland. I like to avoid the crowds, and we used to do this when I hunted public lands. We learned, and it took me 10 years to kill my first deer. So I made a lot of mistakes, learned through my mistakes. So the way to avoid the crowds for us was to get back as far as we possibly could. But sometimes you can't do that, but you can avoid the crowds. Don't hunt weekends, but that's hard to do. I mean, that's when you got time off. Holidays, opening day is probably one of the busiest times. It's a great way to do this is to drive around a game land area. You'll see areas that are, especially during the hunting season, you'll see all these trucks parked there, or just before the season, they're all scouting out. This is going to be an area where there's a lot of people probably. Can you avoid those? Maybe not. But if you're going to hunt there, this is, again, get there earlier before those other hunters are going to be there. Get back as far as you can. Get back there in your stand before these hunters come in and sit and wait. So this is a way you can make this overcrowdedness to your advantage. Bad weather is a great time. I wouldn't recommend in blowing gale force winds, deer uses their senses. High winds block all their senses, blocks their sense of smell. There's too much movement from the trees and leaves blowing all over the place, and the noise, so they don't like it. They a lot of times will hunker down in the thick stuff and wait for that to blow over. If you're not going to hunt archery, this is a great way to avoid crowds. There's far less archers than there are gun hunters. The season opens, like I said, it's going to be open here in a few weeks, and it's a little warm and can be buggy, but the deer aren't pressured yet. They're doing what they normally do. It's a great time to be there. It also gives you some opportunities. Somebody may have 5-10 acres. They wouldn't let a firearm, but they might let it bow or a crossbow. So take advantage of that. There is an urban archery season. This occurs in January. You can go to the NCWRC.org and look up urban archery. It's a chance to get out there after the deer season with your bow or crossbow. Another one is muzzleloader. This is open after archery, but before the rifle season, the centerfire rifle. Good thing about muzzleloader, they're they got enough power to kill deer readily, and some of the newer ones with the rifle, with the right bullets and everything, can kill out to 150. Some people say out to 200 yards, but it's somewhat limited to range versus a centerfire rifle. But the good thing is you can order them through the mail, and they are not terribly expensive in most cases. They are single shot. You have to load them through the muzzle. It takes a little bit of practice. But I love muzzleloader season. It's a great time to be out. So what are you going to hunt from? Are you going to use an elevated stand? This is my recommendation. I think this is where a majority of deer are killed nowadays is from elevated stands. But there are ground blinds. They can be very successful as well. I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't say don't ever hunt from the ground. I would never say that. But elevated stands, I think, gives you some advantage. So the type of stand you're going to use depends on where you're going to hunt. If you're going to get way back in there, like I recommend, that upper left-hand picture of the double ladder, you're not going to lug that back there. So you're going to have to think of something that's portable, like the climbing stand on the upper row, second one from the left. That's a climbing stand. Those are now very light, 20 pounds, 25 pounds. You can climb virtually any tree that doesn't have a bunch of branches on it, and it's very, very portable. The other one, the one on the far right, the fixed position stand, is fairly portable, and so that's another possibility there. The one I don't have pictured here is the saddle stand. That's kind of popular right now, and you may want to look into that. That's portable as well. What type of habitat is it? Are there mature trees? Obviously, if there's no trees, you're not going to put a ladder stand up or a climber. You may want to look at the tripod. That one, second from the right there, is one you don't need trees, but it's not real portable. Some of them are a little bit smaller. You can carry them a little ways, but you just got to make that decision. Are you hunting private or public land? You can't, when you're on public lands, if you leave a stand out there, it's a first come, first serve. So somebody legally can hunt your stand if they get there before you do. So, make it, hide it. I used to hunt public land with a climbing stand. We'd go out there, scout, set it up. I'd put it down on the ground, cover it with some brush so nobody could find it, and I never had a problem. Again, getting to from your stand quietly is important. And can you find your stand in the dark? When you go out there, you're going to get out there before the other hunters. That picture on the bottom left, those are reflective tacks. I highly recommend those. They're not readily seen by other hunters to find your stand, but with a headlamp walking in, they shine like a runway. They're very easy to see, sometimes out to 100 yards away. And what you do is you just map your trail going to your stand using these tacks. Very, very effective. They're not very expensive, well worth using. If you're going to use an elevated stand, this is just something I push. Judy and I both teach hunter ed. Always wear your fall arrest system. These are great. They're easy to put on now. If you buy a stand, they come with one. They're not quite as easy to put on as the ones you can buy at stores that are like a vest. They make it much easier. I like to add what we call, the lifeline. The life rope is a rope you can see on that upper left. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's a rope you attach above your head after you set up your stand, and it goes down to the ground. You hook into it and it's got a prusik knot and it slips as you go up. And if you were to fall, it locks you and it keeps you from falling to the ground. So these are very easy to use. You hook your tether with a carabiner clip and you slip as you go up. And once you're up in your sand seated, you're already locked in. So great thing to add. Just practice with these stands, you know, practice and practice so you feel comfortable with them. Highly recommend haul lines. These are just ropes or whatever you can get to bring up your equipment. I usually have 2 on every stand if I'm hunting a ladder stand, 1 for my bow or gun and 1 for my backpack. A lot of information here. So this is something when you're talk about setting your stands, you can see some of these images here. You want to get up, especially if you're going to do ladder stands and things that are pretty large. You want to make sure you get them up there early enough so the deer become accustomed to them. You don't want to set them up the day before, and these deer live out there. And then all of a sudden there's this big wad sitting out there that they've never seen before, and that may be all it takes to have them avoid that. So don't silhouette your stand like that one, the left middle, you know, wide open. They can see right through that, and they do look up. You know, some people say, well, you're up elevated, deer don't look up. I've had them look up. I know they do. This is where the movement, they can see your movement up in there. So, you know, make sure you got lots of cover, like the bottom left and the upper left. Those are got good cover around them, kind of block what they can see. Make sure you don't, you know, make sure you know your distances. Put it in a where you have a comfortable distance to shoot. The farther away you can get from these deer, the less likely they are to see you. But you don't want to be so far away now you don't have a comfortable shot. You know, you got too much obstruction and everything. So it's a happy medium. You got to find that spot where you got a comfortable shot, but it's not too far away, but it's not, you don't want to be right in there with the deer where they can pick you up a lot easier. And again, the winds, important to make sure you keep track of those winds. Set it up, if you can, in a northerly position. That upper center picture, if you're facing sunrise, that's what you're going to see, all that glare. And man, it makes it really difficult to see deer. So take a compass out there. If you don't know where north, south, east, and west are, you got I got a device on my phone, and I do that when I'm out there. And I want to make sure I'm facing as much as I can southerly as I possibly can to avoid that rise and set of sun. Again, try to make a quiet approach to your stand. Check your stand. This is why checking your stand before the season, does it squeak? I've had stands that squeak when you move. And this is very important because that squeak, if a deer's close to you and they hear that, they're gone. Cut shooting lanes, you got to have a nice ethical shot, but don't overdo it. That upper right picture shows some lanes. That may be a little overdone, but it was hard to find good pictures of shooting lanes. You want to make sure your bullet or arrow doesn't hit a branch or some obstruction, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to clear cut it. You want to make it so there's a happy median between a good shooting lane and good cover. And I always, first thing I do when I get up in the stand, I get my rangefinder and I range different trees, whatever it might be. I want to know the different distances, especially with archery. And again, practice, you know, after you set up your stand, especially with archery, it's a little bit more important with that. Use the stand that you've set up that you're going to hunt with. Take your bow or even your gun unloaded. You don't want to have, got to be careful of that on game lands, but, you know, make sure you can shoot out of it, you know, so you don't want to get up there opening day and find out your elbow hits the tree or something and you can't shoot it. So we're talking about these deer senses. Again, hunting strategies, this is the key. And then number one is your sense of smell. It truly is your enemy. They can smell you from 100 yards away or more. And it is hard, you can't totally defeat your sense of smell. You're giving off your scent molecules constantly. And so the wind direction is key. But I wouldn't say, I'm not a real fan of scent blockers and all that. But I would not say don't use them. You know, try everything you can. A lot of these guys are going to try, a lot of hunters try everything they can to knock it down just a little bit. So there's scent cover sprays, there's clothing, different things like that. There's scent attractants. You know, there's cover scents like pine, you get earth. There's attractants like doe and heat urine and different urines. But I do warn you, don't use a doe and heat urine during bow season when their doe aren't in heat. That's made to use during the rut, you know, but you can use just the regular urines, things like that. Avoid walking, don't walk down the middle of a deer trail, you know, walk off to the side. You don't want to put your scent on these deer trails. They can pick up that scent very quickly, very easily. So again, sense of smell is their number one. This image there on the left, that's actually Hunt Stand. It's a hunt app, and you can go on there and it gives you a cone of scent. That's what the red is. That shows you which direction the wind is blowing based on this app, which doesn't mean that's what's exactly going to happen when you get down in the ground, but this kind of gives you an idea of what to avoid. Okay, hearing is, they do have acute hearing. Again, practice getting to your stand quietly, climbing your stand quietly, making as little noise as you can. Things like snack wrappers, water bottles, things like that, they make a lot of noise. Velcro, you're opening up your binoculars, open up this is making noise. Your gunner bow, you know, hitting a metal stand is going to make some noise. You can't avoid 100%, but what you do want to do, if you do make a noise, just freeze, don't move, because what happens is the deer hears a sound, they're going to turn and look and try to identify what made that sound. If you're absolutely frozen and they can't tell what you are, they'll go back to what they're doing. They hear sounds in the woods all the time. There's squirrels, there's birds, there's branches falling down, there's, you know, just every kind of noise you can imagine. And so they don't run every time they hear a noise. They try to identify what it is first. So this is the hearing, again, freeze if you make that sound. Same with vision. This is why blaze orange is so effective. They don't see blaze orange like we do. We see it very well. You know, wear your blaze orange during the rifle seasons. They do have very good night vision, but you got to limit your motion. You know, we sit with new hunters and they tend to get fidgety and they want to move their hat and swat at bugs, and you start eating and drinking, and that's all this movement. And if you're doing all that, a deer may look up there and see this movement and they'll turn and walk away, and you may not even know they were ever there. So if you do have to move, I recommend you scan the area as best you can. Even when you're using binoculars, I recommend binoculars. I use them a lot, but it does take movement to lift up your binoculars and scan the area. You know, look with your eyes first to see if there's nothing standing right there, and then use your binoculars. Slow, steady motion is the best way to go. And the more comfortable you are up in your stand, the less fidgety you will be. So, you know, being nice and warm and have a nice seat cushion can make it much less motion for you. And so deer do vocalize. You can hunt deer for a long time. I don't hear many deer vocalize, and when I've been hunting, and I've been hunting a lot, many years, they just don't make a lot of sound. But there are sounds you can use. You can buy calls. You can go to your phone. I've got I loaded this app just to, I was going to try to play these and see if you can hear this. Like the grunts, the grunt tubes, you can buy these things, very easy to use. This is something that a lot of hunters have in there. Some people say they've had deer come running in there when they grunted. I've never had that happen, but I'll get it there and I'll use them every once in a while. But here's what a grunt sounds like. So that's a buck grunt. Very, very simple to make. The fawn bleat is something you generally don't use. It can attract doe, you know, if they think their fawn is injured. But by the time hunting season goes along, you know, most of the fawns are a little bit older, so you may not hear that. The rattling is when you get that set of antlers. You can see that upper right. You can either get natural antlers or you can buy synthetic ones, and you bang them together. You're trying to imitate two bucks fighting. If you go on to YouTube or one of those and you look up, search two bucks fighting, and then watch these things, you can see some of them get so serious. There's no way you're going to imitate that, but you can make these bucks, these antler rattles. I have tried it. I haven't had any success with it. Some areas of this country, it's very successful. Out in Texas and stuff, where the buck competition is so great, they'll come running in there. The theory is they think these two bucks are fighting for a reason. They want to go investigate why. It may be a doe that's in heat, and they can, while these two are fighting, they can take advantage of that. So it's something worth trying. You do realize, though, there's a lot of motion when you're banging antlers together. That center picture is a rattling bag. That's something less motion. It's just a bunch of dowels in a bag, and you kind of shake them together, and they will kind of simulate the sound of a bucks fighting. The tending grunt is one I have heard. This is just basically this. It's just a series of grunts. I saw this one time when a buck was following a doe, and he was doing that as he was walking along following this doe. So these are all good things to try. You can, you can't use electronic calls out in the woods, but you can learn. This little can call down there, this Primos thing, that's the estrus bleat. All you do is turn it over and it makes a meh, and that's something, again, I had one and tried it, but I'm not trying to discourage you. By all means, try them. But these are things that can help, and you might hear them. But you will see, and this is something you see pretty regularly when you start seeing a lot of deer. They do body language. They are a herd animal, and they like to warn their buddies that something's not right. So the first one up there, foot stomp, that upper picture, you can see its front foot is up in the air. They will actually lift it up and stomp it down on the ground. Whatever reason, trying to get something to move. Maybe they see something, they don't know what it is. They want to try to get some reaction to it. I'm not sure, but they do this on a regular basis. I've seen that several times. The head bob is something they do, not necessarily when they're alarmed. This is something they do when they're feeding. They'll be browsing along, feeding. All of a sudden, they'll lift up their head and they'll look around. Then they go back to feeding because, again, they're looking for danger. They're going to pop their head up and see if there's anything there. They may not even hear anything. It's just something they do all the time. If you're up in your stand, there's one feeding out there, and it all of a sudden lifts up and looks towards you when you're trying to lift your bow up, and it sees you, it may be gone. So you got to, what I like to say is when there's a deer out there that you're thinking of getting ready to, you might want to shoot, watch its face and its eyes. Don't move if it looks like those eyes can see you. I like to move when a deer goes behind a tree, its head goes behind the tree or behind a bush. Even then you're moving slow, 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 slow. So the middle picture there, that is high alert. Those deer, every one of those senses they're trying to pick up whatever it is. Their ears, their eyes, and their nose, and they are ready to bolt. So if you see that, if they're looking towards you, they may have picked you up. They could be looking the other direction. There could be another deer coming out in the field. So it's just something just to be aware of that. And then that bottom picture, that's why they call them white-tailed deer. That is the alert to the herd that there is something wrong. I'm getting out of here. You may never see that one again. So that's the flag that they to alert others that there's danger. All right, so most of the thing I'm talking about is, it's new hunters, and we've sat with a lot of new hunters, and it's nothing against them. It takes time to train your brain. This is what I talk about, training your brain to see a deer. And a deer standing out in the field is pretty easy for everybody to see. But when they're in the woods, that's not so easy. So you've got to train your brain to look for things other than a full body of a deer. This picture down there, if you can see that, back in the background, I don't know if I can bring my cursor there, but there is a deer right there. You can see the white, you can see its tail right there, but that is a deer. And if you're sitting up in your stand and you're looking for a whole deer, you may look, may not even see it. There's not even any leaves on the trees there, see that? And it's hard to see that deer. So you got to practice this. You got to practice looking for this. look for anything that's different. I like to say horizontal line in a vertical world, because those backs and the belly are horizontal. Most of your trees are vertical. So you're looking for something that's abnormal in the woods. You know, I like to use birds and squirrels, and you're like, if you got your dog and is walking in the woods, this helps you pick up movement. You know, if you can pick up a squirrel up in a tree, you know, it's not a deer, obviously, but you're training your brain to pick up that motion, some movement, something unusual up there. If you can go to a place, park, or something that has quite a few deer, this is a great place to practice. You know, don't just look at the deer in the field. Let them have them walk, or watch them walk from the field into the woods. What do you see? You know, how do they just disappear? It's like Field of Dreams. You know, they just disappear in the woods. You got to walk through there. You got to look through the trees, past the trees, in between the little spaces between the trees, and you're looking for the movement. Their tail wags all the time. Their ears move. Their head moves. So these are the things you got to focus on. You got to practice looking for. So there's a deer there. It's kind of wide open. You can tell that person's very close to it. But look at how well that blends in. You know, with the skin, the hide, and everything. It's just very, very easy to blend in, and makes it hard to see. So practice, get out there, look for these deer. A lot of people have deer in their neighborhoods. You know, we talk to a lot of people, say, man, I hunted all day and I come home and there's deer in my front yard. So if you got those out there, practice there. You know, if there's little patches of woods, watch them walk it through there. You know, learn from an actual deer. There's no better way to learn than from an actual deer. Kind of wrapping it up here. This is really a strategy to keep you from maybe getting a citation. But remember, you gotta punch your card. We don't have, in North Carolina, we don't have tags you attach to a deer like they do in some states. You get your harvest report card. Even if you're underage and you don't need a hunting license, you must get your harvest report card. These come with your hunting license when you buy a big game a license. They've changed it as of last year. You now have to punch the month and the day that you harvested this deer. You have to do that before you move the deer. So once you shoot it, you know it's dead. Don't be up in your stand and shoot a deer and it runs off. Oh, I got that one. I'm going to punch my tag. Don't do that. Let the deer, you know, wait for 30 minutes. If it's a gun, wait for longer. If it's a bow, before you go and start tracking it. When you come up to it and it is definitely dead, then you want to punch your tags. But you want to be happy. You probably take some pictures. You can do that. But then punch it before you drag it to your vehicle. You know, if an enforcement officer is waiting for you and you haven't punched it and you're dragging your deer out, they may cite you. So now this is something new. You used to have 24 hours. Now you've got to register this by noon the day after the harvest. And what you're going to do is it's all electronic. If you haven't done this before, you call it in, you give them some information. They're going to ask you for the county and what piece of equipment we're using to hunt, and dogs and different things. What was it, a buck, a doe, or a fawn? So they're going to ask you all that, and they'll give you a harvest, an authorization number, and that will be something you write on that line. They got a blank line, so you'll need a pen or a pencil to write that on there. And once you've done that, you can take possession. You can go ahead and, you know, have that deer processed. So very, very important to do. And it's when we had the enforcement people at the GSO this past weekend, that was probably, I think, one or two. The blaze orange was another one. Blaze orange, have your blaze orange on. Leave it on even when you're up in your stand. Don't take it off. But they said, I think the number one was not punching your tags. So that was one of the number one citations that they had. So that's all I have. And actually, we got a slide here that I'm going to have Judy's going to talk to you about real briefly. And I want to thank you for taking your time to listen. And we will have questions here as soon as we're done.
Okay, thanks, Guy. So the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program is really pleased to have partnered both with the Wildlife Resources Commission and Opportunity Outdoors. We are now delivering a coordinated program offering a full year of mentored hunting experiences. Content will include that developed in collaboration with the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and opportunities developed by backcountry hunters and anglers as well. In providing multiple experiences in a variety of formats over the course of the year, we hope that each of you can help to develop your skills based on where you are, build your confidence in the woods, and help you to begin to develop your social hunting network. Most events are free to attend. Each event will be geared to a specific audience, primarily dependent on your level of experience and if you have friends and family to help you or not. You'll enjoy and enroll for these events individually, which will allow you to participate only on those programs for which you have an interest and have time to attend. To participate, reach out to the Wildlife Resources Commission by sending an email to gso.ncwildlife.org, and you may also reach out to New Hill or Opportunity Outdoors to launch your participation. Here's a brief list of the things that we have already booked for this next calendar year, and hope to see you at some of these events.
Yeah, and I know the New Hill group, New Hill Hunter Education Mentoring Program class, you know, because of COVID is why we're doing these webinars. We get all the students together and we do 5 sessions a year, and we have one that's indoors where we're going through a bunch of different stuff, but then all the rest of them are all field work. You know, we go out scouting, we do blood trails, we do all kinds of things, hands-on stuff, and we're hoping we're going to go back to that in 2022. So we'll keep everybody informed as to how that progresses. It all depends on the COVID thing. This year in 2022, we're going to be still at New Hill. Our name can still be used, but we're going to be at Harris Lake County Park. We lost our land in the Duke Energy property, but we will be meeting at Harris Lake Park to do all our field work there. So looking forward to working with them. They're a great partner as well. Excellent.
All right. Thank you, guys. Okay, well, we will go ahead and do the last couple of slides here and start wrapping up. So special thanks to New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program and all facilitating partners. Watch for a post-webinar email with a link for all materials related to this evening's webinar. If you have further questions or would like more information on outdoor opportunities, please contact the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program at the link or Facebook page provided. Also check out NCWF.org to learn more about the Wildlife Federation and to join a local chapter. And please do not forget, this is a reminder of the slide that Judy went over about all of the upcoming hunting opportunities. So just email gso@ncwildlife.org if you would like more information. And yeah, I would just like to thank all of the guest speakers and everyone for attending these webinars. And thank you, Guy, for this fantastic presentation tonight. And yeah, that's it. So you guys have a great evening.
And thank you, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Liz.
Thank you.